Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery. It is a beautiful Tuesday morning, May 23rd, 2023. We get together with our distribution partners most weekday mornings at this time to talk about strategies, tips, techniques, share success stories, and support each of you. Today is a great topic. I think you'll find it beneficial as we need to continue to keep our eye on the ball. And that is, what can we do to help clients become credible for funding? You and I know there's nearly an infinite number of small business owners out there. Most of them want, many of them need more capital to reach their potential. But what you and I know, it's not about what you want or what you need, it's about what you qualify for. What you and I are really good at is helping small businesses become credible. So we're going to talk about one element of that today, which is our free business credit building resource. So if all's going as planned, my screen is shared and you should see this topic on your page, on your screen. So one important aspect of the Startup Business Funding Package is getting each participant, in other words, each client, business credit worthy, by adding primary trade lines under their EIN for free. So let's break this down, because if we don't understand the why, then the what just simply doesn't matter. So the presumption is that small business owners come to us, you and I, because they want to get qualified for funding. And you and I have the expertise, the willingness, the intent, the desire to help them become credible. Well, how does business credit fit into this? Why does it matter? Well, let's stop looking at it from our perspective and let's step back and pretend that we work for a bank. So you and I are bankers and we're on the banking committee together and we review applications, let's say every Wednesday morning, for small businesses that have come to us to apply for a loan. Well, what are some of the things that we would be concerned about as we're looking at the application? So you and I are deciding together, do we want to approve the loan to that business? Well, one of which is, have they paid their bills on time in the past? Have they demonstrated a responsible use of credit? Because it's a little bit of a stretch for you and I. Again, you and I are pretending, role-playing, that we're on the committee at the bank reviewing applications. So if you and I had an application of someone in front of us that has multiple trade lines open under their EIN, they've demonstrated that they pay their bills on time, does that applicant look less risky than someone that comes to us and has a business that has no credit ever extended to them, no demonstration that they'll pay as agreed? Of course, of course. So that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish, is that we're demonstrating to lenders that the business has experience in managing credit and will pay as agreed. Because again, continue with that role play. What is our number one concern if you and I are bankers lending money? Our number one concern is, will that borrower pay us back? Will they pay as agreed? That's ultimately what we want. Is we want to loan businesses money. You and I, as pretend business bankers, we want to loan businesses money, but what do we want? We want them to pay back as agreed. That works well. But if you and I were bankers and we lent money to businesses that don't pay as agreed, that's bad for our bank, bad for our shareholders, probably bad for us keeping our job. So what is it that, ending that role play, so what can you and I do as technical advisors helping clients who want to qualify for funding? We want to make sure that they look good on paper. We want to demonstrate that they have experience in managing credit and that they'll pay as agreed. Makes all the sense in the world, especially for the larger the capital raise. Can you and I just imagine, we'll go back to that role play one more time. So you and I are business bankers. We have all the applications in for loans from the prior week, and it's Wednesday morning, we're reviewing them. And we have this applicant asking for $100 or $200 or $300,000, whatever that dollar amount is, but a large, it's a six-figure loan request, and they have no demonstrated experience managing credit with that business. That's a stretch, isn't it? That's a lot. So their file would have to be really strong in other aspects for you and I to say, yeah, let's go ahead and see how it goes. Let's go ahead and wire over 100,000. They'll probably do it. Of course not. So with that in highlighted yellow, uppercase, yes, startup businesses can and should build business credit. So what you and I are not going to allow is the excuse, oh, it's a startup business, so I don't have any business credit. That doesn't apply to me. We're going to give that a big bullshit stamp. That is not accurate. Even if you have a startup business, our first priority needs to be to make that business look credible if our goal is to borrow money. So we're not going to accept the excuse, oh, it's a startup business, that doesn't apply. Make sense? All right, so now let's go through how we do that. If you have any questions, feel free to type it into the Q&A. Now, we need to start with a business that is set up properly, and we'll define that. That's important for two reasons. First of which, the lender is going to care about that as we're trying to prepare for this larger business loan. And then secondly, it'll affect if we get approved for business credit or not. So it has a very direct, relevant, immediate impact. And then it just makes sense as we're trying to move towards the goal. The goal being a larger capital raise. So at no cost, how much do we charge for this? Remember, in the topic, it was free. Down here, it's still free, right? At no cost, you and we are going to help clients add primary trade lines that typically are not involved with business owners' personal credit. So it doesn't matter if the business owner has good credit, bad credit, no credit. We're talking about business credit. And these are going to report under the EIN, under the business. That's what we're calling business credit. Business credit are trade lines under the business. We're not talking about building trade lines for the business owner. We could do that, separate discussion, not what we're on today. So before we start adding trade lines, which we're going to talk about momentarily, we need to make sure that the client is set up credibly. So this is no different. We talk about the 6-step checklist to determine if clients are ready for funding, if they're capital ready. This isn't different from that, but I'm just pulling an extract from that for this discussion. So the first thing, and these could even be numbered in order, but regardless, the first thing that you and I are going to do when we're advising small businesses is we need to check on their address. Do they have a true commercial address? Why does that matter? It's going to impact their access to business credit. It's going to impact their access to business loans. If you want me to elaborate on that, I can, but that's a fact. So what is not good? Using a residential address, not good. A post office box, not good. One of these shared office addresses, like a Regus or a WeWork, where they give you a suite number, but they give other people the same suite number. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about unique. Each business should have its own suite number. If it is a shared suite number, it does not meet the credibility standards. And again, I can give you lots of validation for that if you need, but otherwise I'll assume that you understand why. So what do we need to do before we help them for free build business credit? Make sure that they have a true commercial address. Critical, critical, critical. Do we do that for free? We sure do. There it is. So there's no reason why every small business owner shouldn't be able to meet this first element of credibility, because you and I provide that for free. Okay, moving on. What's the next thing that we need to have before we start adding trade lines? We need to have an entity that's in good standing with the Secretary of State. How much does that cost? The grant pays for that, thus to the client, It is free. Now, could be LLC, C Corp, S Corp. I recommend C Corps, but we're not talking about sole proprietorships. We're typically not going to have the same borrowing capacity with a sole proprietorship / DBA. So we should have a true business entity. Does that cost? Yes, it costs. Does it cost the client? No, it doesn't cost the client. The grant covers it. Free to the client. Third element we need to have is once we have an address, which should come first, once we have the entity registered with the Secretary of State, now we go get an EIN. That's from the IRS, and that's free anyway, regardless of our program. Free and easy. There's services that'll help you do that for a fee. No need to do that. We can get the EIN in 5 minutes for free. Then we're going to turn around and go obtain a DUNS number. What's a DUNS number? Well, if we're talking about building the business creditworthiness of the business, then we need to be cognizant of the primary business credit bureaus, which are different than personal credit. Business credit acts much different than personal credit. Of course, it's under the business, not personal. There's different bureaus like Dun & Bradstreet, which is what we're referring to here. Business credit grows much more quickly, and we can get much more business credit than we could get personal credit in almost every instance. So we're going to help them get this. Now, how you get a DUNS number, there's different strategies. Some cost you, some don't. We'll help them get a DUNS number for free. So what's the point? As we're continuing on, having a strong business credit profile is essential for businesses that are looking to raise capital. Even startups should have a strong business credit profile. We're going to help these folks have a strong business credit profile. But before we can help them have a strong business credit profile, we need to have the foundational elements in place. These are the 4. We provide those for free. Good news, right? Now, on top of that, we're also going to transfer $10,000 over to the client. Well, why does that matter? Well, it matters for 2 important regards. We're going to help even a brand new startup business have liquidity and collateral. Well, why does liquidity matter? Well, understand the definition of liquidity. Liquidity is defined as cash plus cash equivalents. And so we want to make sure that the client looks liquid on paper. We want to make sure that the client has collateral on their financials. So that concludes step 1. I'm going to move on, obviously, to step 2. Does anyone have questions on step 1? You can type your questions, comments, or concerns in the Q&A of Zoom. It's kind of like a chat box. Okay, so Timothy's wanting to confirm. So yes, I don't know what else to say, Timothy. It's free. We provide them address for free. We cover their registration with the Secretary of State for free. We help them get their EIN for free. We help them get their DUNS number for free. All right, Sarah's asking about the DUNS number. So when an entity is created through a Secretary of State, each state, all 50 states have a Secretary of State. When an entity is created, the business credit bureaus like Dun & Bradstreet, for example, often pick up on that because it's public record, and they may create a profile automatically. But what I promise you is 99 times out of 100, that default profile that's created for a business is incomplete and or inaccurate because it's just pulling from a few fields of information from that public filing. So we need to go in and get that cleaned up and review. So we get a DUNS number, and then we go make sure that that profile is accurate and strong. Well, what's one element of making that accurate and strong? Well, we can upload financials to Dun & Bradstreet that makes us look stronger. Oh, I don't have financials. It's a startup. Oh, you will, because that's part of what we do is we help each startup create financials so they show liquidity and collateral. Okay, so let's move on today to step 2, which is, of course, kind of the goal today, which is we need to add trade lines. What are trade lines? Trade lines are extensions of credit that are reflected on the credit report. So this applies to personal and business. Let's talk about business, which is our focus here. So this means that the business has extensions of credit. That's really what we're talking about, adding trade lines. So a trade line could be a loan, a line of credit, an extension of credit like a net 30, could be mortgages, automobiles, so forth. And that largely could be the same for you and I as people, separate from the business. Do we have trade lines on our personal credit reports? Most of us do, right? Most of us have one or more credit cards. Some of us have mortgages. Some of us have car loans. Those are examples of trade lines. So a trade line is some extension of credit. The model may be different. It could be a term loan or revolving, what have you. That doesn't matter. But it's an extension of credit that's reported on the credit report that demonstrates to the rest of the world that we do what we say that we'll do. So from the business perspective, back to step 2, we're going to help the clients add trade lines. We have over 20 trade lines that can be added rapidly. Now, do we need to add 20? We do not. Would we want to add all 20 at one time? We would not. We know, you know, I know, or if you don't know, you'll know in a moment. To create a PAYDEX score, P-A-Y-D-E-X, PAYDEX score, that's the credit score terminology label from Dun & Bradstreet, one of the most important business credit reporting agencies. To have a Dunn's PAYDEX score, tying back to this, we need to have at least 4, F-O-U-R, 4 trade lines. So if we had 1, we wouldn't have a PAYDEX score. Wouldn't have a bad one, we'd have none. If we had 2, we'd have none, 3, none, 4, bam. That's the magic number. So are we going to help these clients add 20? Not right up front, because that's not a good idea, and I'll explain more in a moment. But we do want to add 4 quickly. Why 4? Because if we don't have at least 4, it doesn't trigger a PAYDEX score. We want to help these clients have at least an 80 business credit score. Business credit scores go from 0 to 100. We need to have at least an 80. By having 4 trade lines report under Dun & Bradstreet, we'll accomplish that. Well, is more better? Well, ultimately, yes, but we need to get the first 4 added as quickly as possible, because then when we add more after that, we're going to get bigger and bigger approvals. So that's why we wouldn't just go out there and just say, oh, go get all 20. We don't want to go get 20. Let's get 4 or 5. Now, the different business credit bureaus operate differently. Let's look at a different one. So we've been talking about Dun & Bradstreet. Let's talk about Experian Business for a moment, a different one. We will also add at least 1 trade line that reports to Experian Business. Experian Business does not require 4 trade lines to generate a score. And in fact, Experian Business will give every business an initial score, even if they have no trade lines. And you're like, oh, problem solved. Let's just skip that. Well, the problem is this, is they will give every business a failing score. I've been doing this for a long time, and almost in every instance, an initial score from Experian Business, which is called IntelliScore, as in contrast to the PAYDEX, an initial Experian Business credit score for a business, if they do nothing, will typically be a 27, 28, or 29. Now that's on a 0 to 100 scale. That's a failing score. So you see on Dun & Bradstreet, we'll start out with no score and have no score until we have 4 trade lines. No score is not good, but it's not failing. It's no score. It's even worse with Experian Business, because they will automatically assign a score that's a failing score, a high 20s, mid to high 20s. So it's incredibly important that we help every small business owner build out their business credit profile, because even if they've done nothing wrong, even if they've never applied for credit, even if they've never not paid as agreed, they've always done what they promised to do, by default, they'll have a failing credit score. The public can access business credit scores differently than personal. So if we have a bad business credit profile, that can also, in addition to impacting our loans, our competitors can see that, our potential clients can see that. So we definitely want to have a strong business credit profile. So in addition to adding, these what we'll call starter trade lines, normally we'll want to start with 5. We have about 20 to choose from, as I mentioned. We can also add business credit cards, and these are great. These are business credit cards, normal credit cards, Visa, MasterCard, and these are obviously available for brand new businesses, or we wouldn't be talking about it in this context. And these can be anywhere from a little bit to a lot. And again, these would report under the EIN, would not show on the personal credit report of the business owner. We can also do things like purchase real estate under the EIN or buy automobiles. I'll do a quick case study and then we'll move on to step 3 and wrap it up. So we've walked the walk. So the commercial building that I'm sitting in now, we knew that we wanted to stop renting and we wanted to purchase a building, a property. And so we went out looking, hired a realtor or retained a realtor, found a property, made an offer on the property, and then went to the Secretary of State up here and filed a new entity specifically to buy this real estate. So with that, we got the Secretary of State approval, turned around and got the EIN. We literally immediately proceeded to purchase the real estate under the EIN, buy the brand new business. We immediately went to the bank and applied for it and received a $10,000 business credit card under the EIN that does not report on personal credit. And since then, we've also bought an automobile under the EIN. So it absolutely works. It absolutely works. You don't need to be so concerned about all the details. What I really need you to understand, though, is that our startup business funding package is incredibly valuable. One of the things that we do for free is help the participants build their business credit profile. And the goal today was to help you understand why that's relevant. All right, so once we have the business set up properly, we add those trade lines, and then now the business is positioned for funding. There's many, many different types of funding, but one of which that we're especially fond of, which you've heard us talk about before, is the Chapman Fund. The Chapman Fund comes from a taxing authority. So it's a much different model. It's funding that they want to disperse, and it's funding designed to start and grow small businesses. So do startups qualify for the Chapman Fund? Absolutely. Do we have to go to the bank and meet bank underwriting? No, it's through the Chapman Fund. So those are both positive attributes, of course. The downside, and some people get mad at me over this, is they cap out at $250,000 per business. Now, if you wanted more than that, we could do one of two things. We could start multiple new businesses and go get $250,000 for each new business. That's option 1. Option 2 is grab the first $250,000 through the Chapman Fund and then just use that as a first tranche, go to other funding sources afterwards. I've had people curse at me, I've had people hang up on me, but I can't help it. The Chapman Fund will only go to $250,000, but there's 2 ways to get above that cap. Number 1, form multiple businesses and go through this process, or use it as the first tranche and then pivot to other lenders afterwards. So in summary, you and I are small business consultants. We are paid to improve financial literacy and help small businesses. And in fact, you make $1,000 for just conducting those evaluations and helping plug these clients into the programming. So we can help them build their business credit, free to them, as we've talked about. The startup business funding package is a great value. So let's turn it over to questions, comments, concerns that any of you have. And then, of course, you know how to reach us. But let's get to your questions. All right, so Deborah has the first question. She says, great information today. Well, thank you, Deborah. This addresses questions that she had in setting up their own business. Yeah, and that's a great point. So when we talk about this, this is good financial literacy. Someone could go out and do it on their own, or normally what you and I would do, Deborah, is help people know about the Startup Business Funding Package, get them in that package, and then they get all the free benefits, and you get a nice, easy $1,000 for helping them. All right. Secondly, she asked, if you're a business consultant or a state director, should you have your own business? Yeah, I would recommend it. You don't have to, but yeah, if you are one of our, which probably most of you are, either a consultant or a state director with us, I would go through the process too. I would enroll yourself in the Startup Business Funding Package so we can get your entity set up properly, and then help you add trade lines, and then have access to funding for your business. So absolutely. Don't have to do it, but would encourage it. Okay. Next question is, how does the business consultant position from the affiliate? Okay. So on our website, which is guaranteedfunding.org, we have the partner page, which is to become an affiliate, and we have the careers page to let us know if you want to be a consultant or a state director. So the question is, what's the difference? Well, all of our consultants are also affiliates, but not all of our affiliates are consultants. Our consultants, small business consultants, are those that are specifically trained, supported, and paid to help with the Startup Business Funding Package. When we applied for that grant, for that U.S. Startup Grant, we had to demonstrate a method of community outreach that was specific to this package to be able to get that grant funding. So we had to create a new role called the small business consultant that's dedicated to that. However, those same people can also become affiliates, get their free landing page, and then be paid for other programming. But that's the technical reason behind it. And then the next question is, would I want to start as a business consultant before becoming a state director? We've had separate trainings on that, and really they're two different roles, right? State directors are team builders, and we have a number of you on here now that are state directors. So state directors are focused on building out a team of consultants. So they build and manage that team, and they're paid generously for doing that. In contrast, small business consultants are working with the clients, leveraging these techniques and knowledge and financial literacy that we're talking about. So you could certainly be a consultant and not a director. There's no cost to sign up as a consultant. There's no upfront cost to sign as a director. So it's not a cost issue. It's just a focus of what do you want to do. Our state directors, we like to set a goal. And the goal for the state directors is to arrange good geographic coverage where we have at least one small business consultant per zip code in their state. And that'll take a little while to ramp up, but that's the coverage we want to have, because in addition to online community outreach and financial literacy, in a perfect world, our small business consultants would be active and visible in their communities, with their chambers, with churches, and so forth. So we want to have good geographic coverage. All right, so we've covered a lot. Are there any other questions, comments, concerns that anyone has as I summarize? So today we talked about the free business credit building resource. We've talked about why it's important. We've talked about the initial foundational step of making sure that the business is set up properly. We've talked about how we'll help them add trade lines that could be anything from net 30 accounts, business credit cards, even real estate or business automobiles. And then we talked about how by having the business set up properly and having trade lines that are reporting under the business, that we're able to then better position the clients for funding. And then we concluded with the fact that as a small business consultant, you don't sell anything to anyone. You conduct that financial evaluation, you help them build their literacy, and you make an easy $1,000 for helping each small business. All right, well, we're at the bottom of the hour. Thank you so much. We'll see you back tomorrow morning. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.